make sure you're as close as you can to your clients if you weren't before. Be transparent, be honest. And it's hard to be obsessive about success and still have the level of, let's say, work-life balance and harmony that you want. That you set the goals are the goals and you achieve them or you don't. But it's your system that follows you wherever you go, and that can really work well for you or not.
How do you kind of reignite someone who's doing well, but they've kind of quit being great? How do you work with that as a coach? Well, hi, Paul. How are you?
I'm great. How are you doing today?
Oh, welcome to the Business Leader Podcast. I've been looking forward to this conversation with Paul Olschwanger, and it's not every day I get to talk to a high-performance coach. So I wanted to bring my A game to talk to you today, Paul.
I'm looking forward to it.
So you primarily work in the asset management vertical. Do you want to share a little bit about the area of your work?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, really, it's interesting because I actually was always curious of people at a young age, and I played all sports, and I loved to compete, but I was never the biggest, fastest, athlete. But so I thought my path was being a sports psychologist, and I was just a little early in that profession. And today, a lot of the professional and college teams have their own dedicated sports psychologists. So when I went to college, I majored in psychology, but I fell in love with who became my future father-in-law. Eventually, I fell in love with his daughter.
They worked out that way.
And so I changed my major from psychology to finance. And I thought I needed to do that to get his approval, his eventual
blessing.
approval.
Yes, you may marry
his blessing. Yeah. As it turns out, it didn't matter, But so I ended up getting into asset management, not necessarily because I wanted to, but because I thought I needed to. And so I was never a big numbers guy. I was always curious of people and was fascinated with what they did for a living. And I had studied their mannerisms, and I studied how they handled success and failure. And at an early age, I actually thought failure was a good thing because I felt like if you failed at something, then you learned from it.
Yes.
And then maybe you didn't make the same mistake again.
I think that's a lesson in sports. The idea that I didn't run the 440 as fast as I would like to, but there's tomorrow, and I'm putting in my reps. I'm, doing what I need to do.
Absolutely. Even when I watch sports today, I look at it as almost like a Netflix series. Every season is a little different. The characters are a little different, and you don't know what the outcome is. And if you watch sports that way, even if it's your favorite team, you don't get so consumed with losing and winning. But it's the story. It's the journey. Because, the journey can take for a long time, and the destination, that doesn't last very long usually. You can't, a team wins, and the next day they're already talking about recruiting for the next season. Yeah. They don't get to enjoy it very long. So, so my career has spanned now 40 years, close to it, 40 years.
Congratulations. Yeah.
It's hard to believe. And I feel like we all are a puzzle. And with each job we do, each role, each thing we learn is a piece of our puzzle. And I feel like, man, I have a lot of pieces to my puzzle. And I want to look, and I coach people this way. There should always be a few pieces missing. So that's your motivation. That's your drive. That's your growth. And if you get them all in place, then you're coasting, and that doesn't sound very exciting to stop growing. And so everything I've done, when I look back, there's a reason for it, and it's led me to what I do today, which is run my own performance coaching firm. I still do an occasional recruiting assignment for our clients just because I have a deep background in executive search. But what excites me, what gets me up every day, and I think people should think of this, what is getting me up today to do what I do is to help people be the best version of themselves. And then we have that same thought the next day for all those people is how do you keep getting better? And if people will allow me to be kind of part of their mirror when they look in the mirror and then they see me as well, to tell them things they're not seeing, and sometimes it's they don't want to hear it.
Yes.
But for me to say it in a way that connects with them and their own personality, their own level of motivation, it's an incredible feeling, and it's an honor to help people and teams and organizations be better. So that's they may be good, but I'm trying to challenge them and almost force them sometimes to think differently in order to be a little bit better.
Well, as a performance coach in the asset management field, you're in one of those areas where the world delivers you a report card every day, how the markets are doing. And then your client gets a report card, how their accounts are doing every month in their monthly statement, if they're opening their statements. This is a time when you hear people say, don't look at the 401k.
I was going to say, this particular time is probably not the best to be
maybe set those
looking
statements aside for a month or two, but
right.
Your clients get report cards. You know how you're performing, just like an athlete does. What is your on-base percentage? How many free throws did you make? There's no hiding from the numbers of what kind of performance you're doing. And so as you work with people, we were talking about the excitement that you feel as you help someone understand if for whatever reason the performance they're doing is a little bit off, or they're facing a headwind like we are right now, just with market conditions outside of their control. You can reignite their personal agency in your coaching practice and remind them of the power they actually have every day. So you want to share a little bit what it's like? We talked about the Harvey Specter fictional character who says, most people live here, but I live here. And you help people say, yes, you're living here. Do you want to stay there? Or young emerging top performers who say, I'm on my way to living here. Share what it's like to work with people who get a report card, who look at their performance, their managers look at their performance, their clients look at their performance.
Yeah, no, and I would just add that you're talking about the public markets where there's a scorecard every day and
Yes.
tied to different benchmarks, but there's a whole huge other area, and that's the private markets, the alternative areas where there isn't necessarily a scorecard every day. And we have some clients that are in that category who are actually thankful that the clients are not seeing that day-to-day volatility. The volatility's there, but it's just not as transparent. And that's sometimes the beauty of having a diversified portfolio of both public and private investments in terms of risk and correlation to each other and all that. So we deal with that. You mentioned Harvey Specter as a fictional character on Suits. I'll also add another fictional character, and that's Wendy Rhodes from the show Billions, which is actually where the name of our company, Wendell Rhodes, comes in. And that's exactly what she did on a consistent basis, is help traders and portfolio managers to think logically, to think rationally, to remind them that their superpowers are this, and that, and to go back out there and do their thing. And there's a lot of pressure to create what we call alpha, which is, outperformance relative to a benchmark. And so there is a lot of pressure. And so I think as a coach, our greatest value sometimes is during the worst and most uncertain times, because from an early age, I have always, as the youngest of 5 children, I've always, for some reason, been blessed with staying calm during rough times. And I don't know why, but it is something that, is one of my superpowers. And so during the financial crisis of 2007, 2008, I had a number of clients who were really scared, CEOs, CIOs that were scared. And I feel like I was able to just listen to them, hear their fears, reassure them of a number of things. And I'd like to say that very few ended up jumping. So I do think the mind is a powerful thing, the cognitive part. And I think it also helps the more different markets you've been through and how you've come out of it. So the younger you are, it's more likely that those individuals have not been through those experiences. And so those are the ones we worry a lot about, because the tendency is to go somewhere else and think that the problems aren't going to follow you. Having higher interest rates, having high inflation, or the fear of tariffs, whatever it might be. So I think the key for me as a coach is to remind them that, number one, you have the power, you have the control, you have the choice with how you deal with challenges and adversity, and how can I get you mentally to see this as ultimately opportunities and to think as an investor long-term, not in the moment, to act upon fear. Because, if you're getting whipsawed in the market and selling at the wrong time and buying at the wrong time, you're probably going to end up getting out of the business.
Right.
At some point.
Right.
So I think the biggest challenge is what period of time we're going through right now. And what I tell our clients is make sure you're as close as you can to your clients if you weren't before. Be transparent, be honest, show reassurance, tailor your communication to who your client and who the people are, and just stay proactive. Don't just depend on one mass email. And if you were wrong about forecasting what was going to happen in the first 100 days of our new leadership, admit it, acknowledge it, and again, talk about, reminding people why they did what they did and why they hired your firm for their strategy.
You were interviewed today by the press, you mentioned before we started recording, and you were sharing similar advice, 40 years in the business, a father-in-law, probably longer than that, and having some wisdom from understanding the history of how we got to wherever we are can help you say, this is how you're resilient. This is how you ride out a storm. We know storms will come and that they will pass. And so I think it's so helpful when you can bring that to bear. Not only do you understand the asset management market, kind of the investment vertical your clients are working in, but also how to be resilient, how to choose how you respond, to be response able, as Stephen Covey used to say. You can choose what your next steps are. We talked a little bit about, because we have the experience of being an executive coach talking with a client, we can spot the holes in their boat. What's going on with you? What's up? What are your concerns? What might wake you up at night? And we plug the holes in the boat. So that they can bring their best selves to their day. And your conversation, even with top performers, about being 1% better every day is just fascinating, especially as they learn in working with you to do exactly that.
Yeah, and there's another word that I use that I think is maybe not every coach uses, because it sometimes can be a negative. And that is, if I think about our clients and many of the people that I know in our industry that have been incredibly successful, and now they have that top, they're the owner, they're the CEO. There's a certain level of being obsessive about success and about that obsessiveness also then deals with, under that obsessive umbrella is the resilience, is the calm, is the rationalization, but it's the obsessiveness of being successful and then defining successful. And it's hard to be obsessive about success and still have the level of, let's say, work-life balance and harmony that you want. It's hard to get it all. It's hard to be at the top and be consistently successful every year, every decade. So a lot of times there's this level of obsessiveness at the top that then starts to decline to the point where a lot of the people that I work with, I want to see a little bit more obsessiveness and not see that as a negative. Because we then worry about, workaholic, or you're on your deathbed, you're not going to be wishing that you spent more time at the office. I get all that, and I do believe in having a consistent routine every day that deals with your own health. But get that all out of the way, like before the day starts, and then be great and be better every day. So the obsessiveness thing, I talk to a lot of our executives about, but we talk about how can we have that trickle down and impact others where they care as much as you do, the CEO. Yeah.
Well, you talked about planning how you live, planning that your nutrition, your exercise, your meditation, or your prayer practice, that you start your day that way so that you are setting yourself up for success. And Adam Grant and other people that you follow, the work of Ray Dalio and Principles, the tool you use, you look at the baseline choices that you're making to set yourself up for success. I think of a sports story about football players who would choose. Jerry Rice was famous for this with the 49ers. He played maybe 10 years longer than he should have played in terms of the average lifespan of an NFL player. And part of the reason he did that was he managed his nutrition 12 months out of the year, not just during the season. My mom retired to Flagstaff, and there were stories about him going to the altitude at 4,000 feet.
I know that well.
With the Olympians in the off season.
Yeah.
He was a football player 12 months of the year, and he maintained that same routine. He worked on staying fast and fit and healthy, and also his mindset, because for top performers, it's so much about mindset. But as you help them continue to choose to set themselves up for success. You talked about the feedback you get from their managers or the principal of the firm that say, what are you doing with this guy or this gal? I'm looking at this turnaround and we're getting along and his or her numbers are there. Talk about how great it is when you spot the holes in someone's boat, help them keep choosing to set themselves up for success about how do I want to be living? What do I want to be going for? And then how can I make that happen for myself? Because as you mentioned, it's the man in the mirror that makes it happen.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I'll throw one other athlete, and that's Kobe. And Kobe's an example that I think I hope to have one day was when I'm gone that people are still benefiting somehow from me, and that's so rare. But I could tell you so many Kobe stories. In fact, to this day, part of my daily routine is I'll usually listen to something from Kobe. Maybe it's only 5 minutes, but it reignites, it inspires. It's again all about that, the Mamba mentality. And so when I think about the conversations with CEOs, and let's say they're the founder of the firm, when times are tough, they don't have a default like many other people at the company. And I think when you don't have a default, man, you find a way to grind your way through and you figure it out or you create something new. And I think for a lot of people, because they always have LinkedIn or Indeed or ZipRecruiter to click apply or buddies in the industry, then how they deal with adversity sometimes is different.
Yes.
If they didn't have that default, I think that matters. I've heard that from a number of founders.
Yes.
That, so there's a chance that, hey, our company's going to go down. And I'm the founder and I got to talk to our investors and all that stuff. But I do think that matters, that mindset.
Absolutely. You talked about being obsessive, and I think about Steve Jobs when I think about being obsessive and how the inside of the computer had to be beautiful as well as the outside. He looked at design elements that nobody outside of the people putting the Mac together would ever see, but he needed it to be completely done. Like the whole thing, that level of obsessiveness is how you go here. And you can still have the work-life balance you mentioned if you set yourself up for success with your nutrition, with your family time. But having these goals and saying, what do we have to tweak in terms of your mindset to put you back on the achievement track you chose for yourself? And they learn how to do that. Then as a coach, we can celebrate that now they know how forever. They know how to be resilient. They know how to shift. They know when, okay, it's time to talk to Paul again because I have 2 holes in my boat and I'm going to work through with him how to plug those because I have a destination in mind and I can't get there with a leaky boat.
Yes. Well, another individual that I follow and I've read his book, James Clear with Atomic Habits, is so it's such an easy read and it's so easy to follow and it makes so much sense. It's like a lot of common sense. The importance of your habits, I think he refers to your system versus the goals that you set. The goals are the goals and you achieve them or you don't. But it's your system that follows you wherever you go and that can really work well for you or not. And so I think a lot of times our conversations are around just talk to me about your typical day. Talk to me about, and I'm just thinking, what are the habits? And then how hard are they to break and change? Because once we lock into a routine and habits, then the longer we do it, the harder it is to change them and make them better. But I think I do suggest a number of books for many of our clients, and that is usually one of them. Another one for younger folks or people in kind of mid-career that are kind of scratching their head and saying, what am I supposed to be doing? The Purpose Path by Nicholas Pierce is an excellent read, but I even suggest that people get the audio version because it's his voice. And it talks about, the importance of having the courage to pursue what your calling is and to try to connect your soul to your role. And that it's so important that you're not just clocking in, clocking out, collecting a paycheck, having a title, having a responsibility. And then you look up and it's like, what did all this mean? Like, did it really matter? What was the value? What was my purpose? So I think that's a great book for a lot of people. And that's like a reminder to people that are listening or watching this is we have now so much access to unbelievable resources of great writers and theories and concepts that can make us better.
Yes.
Sometimes it's almost overwhelmed, like which one should I choose? So I'm
Mm-hmm.
happy to share that sometimes with people. And
Mm-hmm.
when I did the podcast for 3 years,
Mm-hmm.
it was like writing a book, and I'll sometimes refer to an episode as if it was a chapter in a book that I wrote.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm so proud of that podcast. We did 52 episodes. You're a podcast host. You can relate to. It's unusual to go beyond the first 5 or 6 and then you quit. You can't find enough people or
Mm-hmm.
topics.
Mm-hmm.
But we had some incredible guests and topics on our podcast that I'm really proud of. And now I extended it and transitioned it to someone else who really wanted to take the baton
Mm-hmm.
and hopefully make it better. And I think he is
Mm-hmm.
already.
Yeah, I
But
think
that's,
it
yeah.
deepened your industry understanding and connections. The last kind of executive coaching area I want to visit with you for your top performers is this idea of erosion. Over time, you fall out of some of the habits. You're doing 10% less, or you're running 3 days a week instead of 5, or whatever it's happened. Some of those systems you put in place, you've over time, little by little, let go of. So we talk about the 1% a day that makes you better. There's the 1 or 2% or 5% where you're just kind of taking it a little easier. You had a good quarter. How do you kind of reignite someone who's doing well, but they've kind of quit being great? How do you work with that as a coach?
I think you have to find where the pot of gold is for them.
Mm,
You have to understand what is important to them, what is their why, what is going to light the fire under them
mm,
to have the motivation to go beyond where they at, or just to even get back to where they were before. Like they are slipping and they may not know it,
mhm,
and they've developed bad habits, and that's the part that's actually challenging, is someone who's had success, they've reached closer to the top,
mhm,
and how do they stay there, or how they even get to a higher mountain? And it's very common what you described is they lose the energy, they lose the motivation because they got to that mountain, and it took so much time and effort, and there's something that's missing, that pot of gold, that new pot of gold that
mhm,
you got to find for them that gets them back reignited.
mhm,
I'm not saying he lost that, but
mhm.
the UConn women's basketball coach just won his 12th national championship. 12th. But here's the deal. He hasn't won one in a while, and you kind of wondered, has the game passed him over? Has he coasted? Has he lost his gift for
Rested on his
success?
laurels for a little while
Rested on his
without
laurels.
really
I'm not sure he
noticing.
did. It's hard.
Mhm,
Look, it's hard but to see him come back to the mountaintop, and it helps to have great players. And he recruited great. He's a great evaluator of talent.
well,
But he also found himself making some adjustments. At 71, he doesn't look 71, but to see that kind of reigniting of passion and excitement. And he was walking the streets of Tampa the morning before the game, and he thought, dear God, I don't care as much if we win for me, but I want to win for our kids.
mhm, mhm.
And so
He
I
found his
just
pot of
love the way he was
gold.
thinking. Yes,
Mhm,
yes.
mhm,
So I think that happens quite often. And it actually, if you don't help someone and they don't help themselves, they can go from being 5% less to 10 to 20. And
mhm,
before you know it, they're half of what they were before. And it is really hard. If you can catch it when it's 2 or 3 versus
mhm,
50,
mhm.
you've got a chance to help them turn it around. And when you help them turn it around, here's the deal too. I always want to be the coach that's in the corner with a golf clap. And I want the individual to absorb the flowers that are coming. I want them to feel, because they made the commitment to change and get better.
Yes.
That's, I think, what makes what I do successful, is that I don't have an ego as it
Mhm,
relates to having be there
mhm,
and my name
mhm,
being acknowledged with the turnaround and the growth and the success of
mhm,
an individual or team or company. As long as our clients pay us well and support what we do, and
mhm,
we have enough to do at that company, then I want the individuals to get the credit for it because they made the investment.
What's, I think, distinctive top performance area for you is 40 years in the business and understanding coaching. We're relating it to sports because so many people can see that. But performance in individuals, whether it's an up and coming, younger top performer, someone who's kind of at the top of their game but wants that 1% or 5% better, the hardest thing may be that more mature, long-term successful person who will sit down and say, I've lost an edge, I need to find it. It's a lot to admit when you've been on the mountaintop for a while and you have the insight, but also that calm demeanor that can say, yes, you're not my first 30-year person in, 40-year person in who says, I need a tune-up, I need a little bit of a reboot. I've got a lot of gold and I need to find a new reason, to be chasing the way I used to be innovative. And you just have the time in the saddle that you can work with all three categories of people.
Yeah, no, I those are all great points. I do work with some people, either formally or informally, who they're reflecting and they're disappointed that their career is not where they envisioned it at this point. And their mindset is more it goes back too far where they're waiting for, as we used to say, their ship to come in. For they're too much thinking it's all about luck and timing, and I'm just waiting for the luck and timing,
right,
instead of taking it upon yourself to maybe network more, be more strategic with your networking. Have conversations like with me and you or whoever, friends, relatives, to really be more proactive in thinking about what really matters to you at this point in your career, instead of thinking, okay, I will just respond to job postings, or I'm expecting a bigger title and more money and more prestige. But is that really what I want to do? And I'm not sure that's the question they're asking. So when I have those conversations, it probably doesn't go the way they think, because they might think, well, I know of someone who's looking, or which I might, but I don't want it to go. I want them to really take a pause and really think about what they really care about at this stage of their career and go do it, go after it. But that happens a lot.
Well, you hear it about fighters. Do they know it's time to hang it up, or should they take another title fight? And you do have to check inside what's left in the tank. Do you want to go again to the top of the mountain, as you mentioned with the female basketball coach, the women's basketball coach? But understanding the psychology of the individual person is, it's the heart of the matter. And then helping them reorient so they decide, they choose, they get up in the morning and decide, I can do 1% better. I might do 5% better. And now they're back in the game if that's what they want. So I love that you try to understand the perspective and have the penny drop for them. No, I think I've had my last title fight. Or no, I've got gas in the tank, I'm still in it. So it's been really great to talk to you, especially at this time of a little market turmoil.
Well, just a little bit.
Just a little bit.
I would just add, finally, I think the success of how we are as coaches has to start with a high level of trust, that someone can open up and not, be worried that it's going to go anywhere else. And so that's something that I never take for granted, but it's always something that I try to emphasize without just saying, you can trust me.
Yes.
Declaratively. The way you handle that first conversation tells that other person that I can open up and I can share things and I can be vulnerable and I can be emotional and it's okay and I'm not judging. That sets the tone, I think, for a very successful coaching relationship.
Well, I know your clients are blessed to be working with you.
Oh, you're very kind.
Well, and especially when you want a Harvey Specter kind of life, when you're like, I'm chasing a rare thing. And
actually, Mike Ross was my favorite character in the show. Even though he was a bit of a fraud, the fact that he was so sharp and and their romance together was very and the show Billions, if people watching haven't watched it, it's worth, I don't know if all 6 or 7 seasons, but it's great. And then you can kind of see the connection to Wendy Rhodes, what she does at the office. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. Well, it's really been great to talk with you about this. I look forward to seeing you as your news reports come out and journalists check in with you. Paul, what's going on? So thanks again for your time today.
Oh, yeah, it's been fun. Thank you so much for having me.
Take care.
All right. Bye-bye.